Show on the road.
I really didn't watch any MLS games this weekend at all. So just throwing that out there that I've got very little to contribute.
Only watched Columbus this weekend.
I watched
Toronto, which was fun.
I did manage to see a couple things. I managed to see that the Timbers managed to draw own goaling in like the 90th minute, so that's impressive. And I watched Simon Borg with the volume off because I can't stand Simon Borg.
But you can still hear him.
I can still just like, yeah, it's still somehow just like
the normal volume when you need it.
Yeah.
Well, if everybody at least saw their own games, that's a good start.
Yep. Yeah. All right.
Oh, we have both Chris and Pete here for the first time in like...
Since we all got drunk.
Yeah.
And then before that, it was like another month or two since Chris and I have been on the same pod.
Yeah. So who is going to intro and host for us today?
I will definitely... Yeah, I'll defer to Chris. I've done plenty lately.
I was going to make Pete do it because I don't know you guys anymore.
Head first.
Oh, man.
Let me look at the thing. Should we start off talking about the World Cup today? Because that was crazy.
Yeah, I feel like we have to at least mention that.
Because I also have an MLS points to make about the games that happened.
You mean like Julio Cesar just watching the ball fly into the back of the net?
Not even
first MLS player to ever play in a semifinal.
Yeah. God.
Look at him go.
Yeah.
Right,
I think we should bring that up. We should be like, well, so the MLS reference in this game was probably one of the most crushingly depressing parts, just watching him like tearfully pull the ball out of the net again and again and again.
There was Mark Geiger. Mark Geiger was the fourth.
Oh, that's true, yeah. Good job, Mark. All right, let's stop talking about this so that we can talk about it in a couple minutes and pretend like it's fresh, that we haven't already exhausted it.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to /MLS Cast. I'm Chris. I haven't been here in a while. Last time I was here, I was pretty drunk, so it's good to see you all again. My Reddit username is PatLandups11.
I'm Ian, username Armascargo.
And I'm Josh, username 97227ist. And the last time I saw you, Chris, I was also really drunk. So don't worry, anything that you said that you may be embarrassed about, I don't remember anyway. So.
And I am Pete, username PunkRockPete, and I also was quite drunk the last time we were around Chris.
We're all pretty drunk.
Yeah.
You know, there's a whole second half to that I
know. Which you probably shouldn't, because that's the part where I'm pretty sure I said crazy things, though I don't really remember what.
Yeah, that stays locked in the archives.
Yeah. There's that gets used for blackmail later on when the gang breaks up, and you know.
Or if we need to fund some sort of like server time, we can get a Kickstarter going.
Yeah.
Put bonus DVD
based on how embarrassed we will be at each.
Yeah.
All right,
for every 10 minutes past where we stop recording, that's going to be the extra cuts.
Yes. All right, let's talk about the World Cup.
Hey, there was a game today. Did anybody happen to see that game? I think it was probably a real close, well played match.
So Germany and Brazil just happened. To anyone listening, we're all just sitting here in shock.
Yeah, somewhere there's somebody who put a bunch of money down on Germany winning by 6 goals. And like probably the person taking the bet was just like, just it's like, oh, you must be really drunk. That's why you're doing this. And now they're pulling back, I don't know, several $1,000s. I mean, the odds on that are gotta be like astronomical.
Yeah, it's like the equivalent.
Not to make it just financial, but yeah.
It's like the equivalent of betting on the safety in the Super Bowl this year. You know, just wild odds.
Except there have been safeties in the Super Bowl like the
What
last
is- I think
5
it was-
years or
Would
something.
be the first score, right?
But it was the first play of the game. That's
true.
that was the whole bet. There was a crazy thing about. I guess people make that bet every year. They have these wild bets they make that cost them very little and have a huge payoff. And every year people bet on the fact that the safety would be the first play, and it never has happened until this year.
Wow.
And I think we would all agree that Brazil getting blown out in Brazil in the semifinals the way they did was pretty unlikely.
Pretty unlikely. Also, the guy who put money on Suarez biting someone, he's got to be pretty stoked as well. Yeah, but that was.
We're pretty heavy gamblers over here.
Yeah, I know.
That's what we base most of our thinking around, is just where we can make the most money.
Yeah, well, you know, just want to accept like the inveterate kind of like chancer that I am.
So
We
how
should be
about-
betting on Canadian soccer then, because it's all crooked up there.
Yeah, it's true. I know. But I'm not doing this in any organized fashion. It's just kind of like random stuff.
We're just leaving it to chance.
Yeah.
Just fund up and see what happens.
So the only MLS player that was involved in the match today was Julio Cesar, who
That was the first time an MLS player has played in the semifinals of a World Cup.
And it
Yeah.
went quite well.
yeah,
He got a lot of camera time.
he really got a lot of camera time. Too bad a lot of it was while his back was turned and he
He's
was
in
picking
almost
the
every
ball.
highlight.
Oh man. You've gotta wonder what's going on in the streets. I remember there was like a big announcement, right at the end of the game. It was like, oh yeah, all the Brazil fans, you need to wait for a police escort.
The German fans.
The German fans need to wait for a police escort to need to wait for the Brazilian police to get them out of the stadium safely. It's got to be a kind of testy time, because I think the one thing that was going to save Brazil from re-experiencing all the protests and stuff that they had during the Confederations Cup was them winning it. And to not win this game without Neymar, but even more importantly without Thiago Silva, I don't think anybody was shocked, but holy shit, they just stopped. They just stopped. It's crazy.
Watched Brazil's play throughout the World Cup. I don't think with those players they had a chance to take Germany down at this point. They haven't had a great World Cup.
No, I don't think they had a chance to win either, but there's not winning, and then there's just absolutely capitulating. And
Yeah, I made the point to my friend after the game, was like, if Brazil loses by like a goal or two, maybe they don't riot. But Jesus Christ, this is something different, totally.
Yeah.
Josh, you spent some time in America do Sud, and how is they try to make the point on ESPN after the game, trying to relate this to something in American sports, and I feel like you can't do that, because this is Brazil playing soccer, its game, at home, the thing they care so much about. You saw all those crying fans. What's that got to be like?
Well, I haven't spent a ton of time in Brazil. I've spent a lot of time in Argentina, which, similar to Brazil, has, in the States, there's, we all know there's lots and lots of games, and very few of those games we have genuine international competition in. Nobody else really plays American football. A few people play basketball, but we're far better. A few people play baseball. Brazil is like, in most South American countries, Argentina, Uruguay, and Brazil in particular, and Colombia to a lesser extent, it's the game. There's really no competition, and it's really like a point of just, the focus of all of the energy that we pour into college sports and all the different sports that we have. Like, just imagine that all on one thing, and then imagine that you are the most successful country at it. And also imagine that the eyes of the world are on you, and it's like a pressure cooker. You could see all those Brazil players were just absolutely inconsolable at the end of the game, because there's just such national pressure on them. And I think that, there's no way that there's not going to be some political repercussions for this, and street protests, or I don't know what, but I think the whole attitude in Brazil is probably not going to turn into like out and out rioting, but I think suddenly people are going to say, like, this was supposed to be a celebration of us, and now we've just been humiliated at our basically their sport in their, they've got 5 trophies in it. They're far and away the most successful team. Well, Germany is very close, but I mean,
they've now been to more. After Sunday, they'll have been to more World Cup finals in Brazil.
Yeah, but
and they now have the all-time goal scorer.
Yeah, and so to have all these things happen, Ronaldo gets displaced as leading scorer, and Brazil gets displaced as being in the most finals, and to have it happen in that way, I think people are really crushed, but I also think it's going to suddenly be the people in Brazil I think they're going to feel like they really got not only let down by the team, but let down by the politicians and kind of hoodwinked by FIFA. I think it's going to get kind of ugly down there, and I think the atmosphere for the next 2 games, which are 2 huge games, and Argentina has there's several 100,000 Argentinians there to watch the game, so I think there'll be a decent atmosphere, but it's not going to be like it was before, where you had Brazilians in there making a huge noise and cheering no matter who was playing. That's all going to vanish. I think it's going to get a lot different.
Well, let me ask you this: Do you think that it's going to help with the knee-jerk reactions that all those goals came in the first half? Everybody kind of had time to let it sink in before it was time to take to the streets. It wasn't any penalty kicks. It wasn't.
Yeah.
They didn't throw it down at the end of the game. Everybody kind of knew what was happening once halftime hit.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I don't know what the feeling's like on the street.
Protests based on the things people were already protesting, the right places, et cetera, et cetera. But it might be the difference between a protest and a sports riot.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, the Brazilian police they're not the most they don't have a soft touch, I would say. So you never know. If you get a couple thousand people in the street anyways, and then the Brazilian police do what they've been doing, which is, beat everybody and tear gas it and spraying everybody with fire hoses and stuff like that, then it could get really, really ugly. And, so I don't know what's going on in Mineiro right now, but it's definitely going to change the complexion of the next 2 games for sure. And
Brazil has lost another game to play.
Yeah, they got to play the 3rd place game. So.
Oh Jesus! I didn't even think of that.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh no.
And potentially that 3rd place game could be against Argentina.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
And depending on I think that was a lot of people's dream final. That's also a legit. There have been a couple incidents with the Brazilian police, getting kind of rough with Argentinian fans, who admittedly lots of them are very, very poorly behaved, and that goes for Argentinian fans in all football club and national countries. So that could be, that could be really ugly, or it could be great. It could just kind of be hey, we're both out of it, and who cares, and let's just have fun. Or it could get really nasty.
Especially if the Dutch win 7-1 also.
I would like to avoid that. I would like to avoid that both for the violent implications and also because I don't want a UEFA final.
Yeah, the thing is Argentina are so bad at the back, and they haven't been tested by any team that they've played yet, really. There is certainly the potential for Arjen Robben to...
Belgium had some pretty good attacking players.
They had good attacking players, but they didn't really attack. They didn't really run at them. The Argentinian backline is not good. You could either see Holland kind of lose 1-0, or I could see Holland win 4-0 or something. You could see
kind of look like that Spain game again.
Yeah, you could see Arjen Robben just fly in past the Argentinian defenders, and I would love it to not. I would love to see Germany Argentina, because I like Argentina and I lived there and whatever. To avoid the UEFA all final, but also I think it'd be, I don't know. It would be, well, I don't know, because Germany Netherlands is
Germany Netherlands is big.
That's a big game. Yeah, that's a big rivalry. That's the '74 World Cup all over again. So
right. And the way I think about it is that, and this is what I thought about the semi today. This isn't by any means a vintage Brazil team. This is kind of a vintage Germany team, though. I mean, you look up and down both of the rosters, and I see the core of the German team is from a Bayern Munich team that's won Champions League in the last 2 years, or like a year and a few months ago. Has won the Bundesliga like 11 times in a row or something.
Yeah.
And whereas Brazil, you look up and down the roster, and first of all, there's only 4 that are playing domestically in Brazil, and I feel like if Brazil is gonna, because they've realistically had 3 consecutive disappointing World Cups, and I feel like a big part of that is a whole bunch of their players are playing. They grew up in Brazil and they grew up with Jogo Bonito, but they moved to Europe and they play the majority of their professional careers there, and suddenly, they're being crafted by English managers, by German managers, by Italian managers, and it's not the same style of play that Brazilians are used to when they come back and play for Brazil.
Yeah, but I mean the whole the whole Jogo Bonito thing is not. There's been a lot of articles talking about the kind of the fallacy of that. Out of that team in '82, there came this idea. People didn't even call it that. That's actually from Pele's autobiography. That term, people call it football arte, which is played that way in a long time. Those teams are consistently getting more and more pragmatic and kind of dirty, and I think you're right. I think a lot of it is that that players are going over and playing. I mean, Scolari used to manage Chelsea, and they were not a pretty side to watch when he was managing them, and most of the players
are.
Yeah, a lot of the players are playing in Italy and Spain and England, and some of them in France, and the people at Real Madrid and Barcelona, you've got to imagine that's a little bit odd to be. Those teams have such radically different styles, and the players that are really the real standout players on the Brazil team, most of them are playing for, or a lot of them are playing for those 2 teams, which have really different styles. Then you've got David Luiz and all those other players from, Oscar and those guys playing for Chelsea, which is, a very talented but fucking abysmal team to have to watch most of the time. Yeah, I mean, it's just, you're right, it's like super schizophrenic styles, and this whole idea of we're gonna get out and play beautiful, nobody's been doing that for years. Ask them to suddenly come together and just be like, oh hey, be a Nike commercial. It's
so I feel like it has something. I feel like it has something to do with the decline of the Brazilian league. I mean, I read an article shortly after the U.S. got eliminated that in order for U.S. to realistically want to win the World Cup, MLS eventually needs to be a world-class league, and I feel like that makes a lot of sense. For that same reason, if you want a bunch of your players playing similar styles to each other, you want most of them playing